It is the eve of week 1, and we are going through Dynasty trade targets by position, all the positions, and talking about the soft buys, the hard buys, the soft sells, the hard sells, a brand new Dynasty trade value chart update for those of you guys looking to make some last-minute trades to push yourself into championship contention or to improve your Dynasty rebuilds going forward. So let's get it kicked off with the running back position. I'm going basically off the cuff with a lot of these because we've been talking about a lot of these dudes all off season, from the redraft cycle, the Dynasty cycle. I'm basically just going to go through why I think they're good trade targets, and the qualification here is based on current keep, trade, cut market value. I think the buys are undervalued and the sells are overvalued here, and that is all available in the trade value chart. And on the right side there, you can see what I would pay in Superflex, what I would pay in one quarterback, but you might get them for less, you might get them for more, in which case this is just basically how I value them. So Dynasty running backs that are hard buys for me: Tyrone Tracy and Isaiah Pacheco. From a redraft angle, I've been very excited about both of these players. Tyrone Tracy getting all of the buzz as the starting running back for the Giants. We've made reference to Jordan Raanan and other beat reporters coming out and saying it's not a competition. He's going to be the starting running back for this team, at least in the short term. Cam Scatterbo from a Dynasty angle is, of course, there long term, but he was a 4th-round pick. He, yes, is a pretty decent prospect, but he's missed a large portion of training camp. And we're not really certain how good Cam Scatterbo is outside of his Arizona State tape at this point. I'm a little disappointed that even before the injuries in camp, he wasn't generating more buzz as potentially being the starter for this team. So maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe it could materialize that by week 4, he's the starting running back. But everything we've heard from basically the NFL draft until now has been that Tyrone Tracy has taken over this lead job. And I do think having him at Dynasty RB22 where I have him is definitely a bullish ranking relative to his like RB30 keep, trade, cut market value. So knowing you can get him right now, if you're a competitive team, or even if you're kind of a rebuilding team just looking to make a profit on a player, I think you can get him for about an early to mid 2nd-round pick right now. And you might be able to sell him for 1st-round value in season, because if he has another season where he is the starter and he proves it, he might jump up all the way to a top 15 Dynasty running back. And Isaiah Pacheco is no different. I think from a long-term angle, people look at Isaiah Pacheco and go, okay, he might be a spot starter this year, might be useful this year. But my thoughts and opinions on him is we've heard legitimate buzz that if Pacheco has like a good season, the Chiefs could extend him. And if Kansas City signed Isaiah Pacheco to a 3-year, $36 million extension, similar to the one that Kyron Williams got or that James Cook got after a good season, which from a redraft angle, I believe he's slated to have a pretty good season, I think we would all feel a lot better from a Dynasty frame of mind about rostering Isaiah Pacheco. We would feel comfortable that he's going to be the starter for the next 2, maybe even 3 years for this team. And even if he does have a bad season this year, he'll probably have an opportunity to get a good starting workload with another team. The only thing that would really hurt him is that if he gets injured again, he would probably lose a lot of market value. But I don't know. I'm bullish on Isaiah Pacheco from a redraft perspective, so I probably should be bullish on him from a Dynasty perspective as well. Moving into the soft buys at the running back position, and just to give you guys a refresher, a soft buy basically just means that you should send offers out for these players. You should see what the market or the person who rosters that player thinks about them, because sometimes soft buys are not soft buys. If they view him above market or they're in line with what the market thinks about those players, then they're not really buys at that point. But Ashton Jeanty, I have listed here as a soft buy. And the reason for this is in keep, trade, cut market value, they value him as more of like a 2 first-round picks, 2 future first-round picks type of asset, as opposed to a 3 first-round picks type of asset like I view him to be. He is my Dynasty RB3. I have him in a tier with the top 2 guys, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs. You get a 2-year clock reset on Ashton Jeanty, even though I do believe that Bijan and Gibbs will outproduce him this year. I think in the long term, Jeanty will have 5-6 year window where he can be in every season RB1, and that is worth 3 first-rounders in my mind. So if you can get him, and especially if you're coming out of a rebuild and you still want a young player to build around who can give you great production, sending away 2 future first-round picks for Ashton Jeanty, if that's all it costs you, is an absolute no-brainer. Again, the person who has Ashton Jeanty might want 3 first-rounders, but that's what he's worth. If you can get him for only 2 first-rounders plus a small piece or something like that, that is what I would be looking to do, because I value him as 3 first-rounders in Superflex and 1 quarterback leagues. Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker are both guys I'm willing to buy right now. The assumption projection with them, similar to Pacheco, because they're from the same draft class, is that they're going to be really solid back-end RB1 type of projections this year, but we don't know the contract status of Walker, of Breece Hall. Breece Hall is probably on more of like a prove-it deal type of situation with the Jets because of last year's, kind of down season that he had, and of course the injuries he suffered to this point in his career. And Kenneth Walker probably in a similar situation because he's been banged up throughout his career. But I believe so adamantly in these players this season that I'm willing to buy into them in Dynasty as well, because I do think if Breece Hall has a top 6 to 8 fantasy football season at the running back position like I think he's capable of, then he'll probably get an extension from the Jets, or at the very least, maybe he gets dealt to a different team. Maybe he signs an extension there, or he hits free agency and signs an extension or a big money deal in free agency. I think that Breece Hall is the type of running back that is worthy of being paid. Same goes for Kenneth Walker because they're young. They're going to be 25 years old after the season is done. They catch passes. They're exceptional athletes. These are not, paying Miles Sanders a contract in free agency like some teams are going to be wary of going forward. I do think that Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker, both with their respective teams and in the NFL at large, are the types of backs who would warrant big contracts. And if you're investing into them this year, again, I do believe both of them project as very solid RB1s for your roster, knowing that there's going to be a lot of people out there that are looking for an RB2 or looking for a type of asset that they can compete with. Don't shoot for the cheap Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara types when you can just pay up for the Kenneth Walker, Breece Hall types and get a nice 3-year window type of player who can give you great production. Again, they're a little risky because of the injury concerns and some of the concerns that people have with the Jets offense, but ultimately they're RB1s in their prime. They're 24 years old. They're exceptional athletes. They catch passes. Those are very good investments to make in fantasy football, specifically in Dynasty, because they should hold their value, and especially knowing what kind of prospects they were, people still hold on to that on the Dynasty market. If you're looking for a cheap running back, instead of paying up for, let's say, Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, somebody who's going to be pretty expensive relative to the amount of time that you're going to get with them, I think that going cheap and getting Aaron Jones for a mid to late second rounder is the way to go about things. If you're coming out of a rebuild and you're like, hey, I have RJ Harvey as my RB2 right now, and I'm hoping that I can get better production cheaper, at least in the short term, while RJ Harvey figures his shit out as a rookie. And I do think that Aaron Jones has a pretty good projection this year. Yes, Jordan Mason is there, but I do view Jordan Mason more so as Aaron Jones' insurance, Aaron Jones' backup. I think he's going to factor into the backfield, but ultimately I think that when both are healthy, Aaron Jones is going to be the guy that you're going to want to start every week, produces like an RB2 or better, depending on how good the Vikings offense is. And then 2 other young guys that I feel very interested in as a rebuilding trade target. If you guys are in a deep rebuild, tanking type of situation, you're probably not in a position to give away draft capital. I wouldn't suggest buying these guys for draft capital if that's the position you're in, because you want to hold draft capital. But if you can get these guys as throw-ins to deals, maybe you're selling off a competitive asset and you get one of these guys back. I do think that DJ Giddens of the Indianapolis Colts and Jonathan Brooks of the Carolina Panthers are good long-term investments to go after because they're both 22 years old. Yes, Jonathan Brooks is going to miss this entire season, but he'll only be 23 entering next season, which, as I could remind you guys, is a year and a half younger than RJ Harvey, who's a rookie entering this season. DJ Giddens is the backup for Jonathan Taylor, who is basically on his last year of guaranteed money. And I do think that if Indianapolis isn't good, because I'm pretty high on Indianapolis as an offense, but if they're not good, they would probably move off of Jonathan Taylor. They'll probably be drafting very highly, take a high-end quarterback. Peyton Manning's nephew is in the draft. Maybe they would be in the Arch Manning sweepstakes, assuming he comes out for the draft. I think DJ Giddens could be the long-term starter for Indianapolis. He was an RB1 or RB2 caliber upside prospect in the model, even with 5th-round draft capital. And when Jonathan Brooks was coming out of school, an RB1 upside caliber prospect, the injuries definitely downgrade him a lot. I don't think it's going to cost you very much for either of these guys. So that is why I'm comfortable going after them. They're good throw-ins to trades. They're good guys to hold if you do already have them on your roster on a rebuild. So those guys, maybe throw them into the back of trades if you're trying to get something done, if you're trying to move competitive assets off your team, or maybe you're gearing towards a rebuild and you do have an extra couple 3rd-rounders that you would want to throw at one of those guys, maybe even less. Like, it could cost you only a 4th-rounder for Jonathan Brooks, and at that point, I do think it would be worthwhile to go after him. So some of the soft sells that I have at the running back position, I don't have any hard sells, guys, that I'm saying you got to get these guys off your team right now, no matter what you get for them. The soft sells I have, similar to the soft buys, is it's going to depend what you get for them. It's going to depend on market value. I like to call soft sells more as shops. They're guys that you're reaching out to your league mates saying, hey, would you be interested in this player? I'm not looking to sell him outright, but I would like to maybe pivot off to a different option. Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs are the two kind of competitive asset running backs that are going to be real needle movers for a lot of people. Now, if you have Saquon Barkley or Josh Jacobs, there's a very good chance that you are a competitive team. You are trying to win the championship this year. But I do think using these guys to make yourself younger could make a lot of sense. Like, for example, I traded off of Saquon Barkley in one league where I just won the championship, and I got Devon Achane, QJ, a couple of other pieces involved in that deal. And knowing that Saquon Barkley's market value is RB4 on the market right now, I have him RB6, Danny has him RB7. You should be able to net 2 first-rounders of liquidity for Saquon Barkley. And if your team especially is one of those teams where you look at it and you go, if things break right for me, I could compete this year, you probably shouldn't be rostering Saquon Barkley and holding Saquon Barkley unless you have a very, very clear top 2 to 3 roster in your league. You are destined for the championship in your dynasty situation here. So I would say shopping off Saquon, going after Hampton, going after Achane, going after Bucky plus, going after Henderson plus. You can definitely get away with that. Make yourself a little bit younger, still get a competitive running back. If you're in a situation where maybe things could go either way, I think that's a good way to safeguard and protect yourself, because if Saquon Barkley, a soon-to-be 29-year-old running back, isn't as productive as he was last year, he's going to lose value. If he deals with any injuries, he's going to lose value, and so on and so forth. The same applies to Josh Jacobs, because from a redraft angle, you guys have heard us in recent weeks not be as high on the projection for Josh Jacobs as maybe we were earlier in the offseason. So it's kind of a similar situation. If you can pivot off of Josh Jacobs to Kyron Williams, James Cook, maybe you can get up to Breece Hall using Josh Jacobs, getting a little bit younger while still maintaining a competitive feel to it, I think it makes a lot of sense for Jacobs. Even though he projects really well, the Packers just traded for Micah Parsons. They're going to have probably a lot of reliance on the run game in general. I worry about a 27-and-a-half-year-old running back with as many touches as he has, producing at the level that we've seen from him in the past. It was just 2 years ago, 2023, where he was coming off a season where he was very inefficient with the Raiders, and people were questioning, okay, is this the end for Josh Jacobs? And even if he does produce again this year, I think it looks more like RB 8 to 12 as opposed to a top 5 type of finish. And he really burns me for saying that you should maybe shop them. All I'm suggesting is that maybe you should try and get younger off of these guys while staying competitive. Or if you look at your roster and you think, hey, I probably can't compete this year, sell them to contenders for draft capital for young players, and so on and so forth. David Montgomery's kind of in a similar boat. I'm of the opinion this year that 28-year-old David Montgomery, if he's not going to give you top 20 type of production, he has absolutely no business being valued as a top 24 running back, which he is on the open market right now. I am of the opinion, because I've kind of been reading the tea leaves in Detroit, that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to take a step forward in terms of the workload that he commands. And I think David Montgomery becomes closer to a handcuff than this guy with exceptional standalone value. And he's a great option to have, especially if you do have Gibbs and you're a handcuff type of person in Dynasty. I just don't think that I'm willing to invest a top 24 running back asset caliber into a David Montgomery, knowing that that's what I can get for him on the open market. So I'd be willing to sell him right now if you can get a younger running back for a similar price. If you can get a better, more competitive running back. Like, I would rather have, for example, Tony Pollard than David Montgomery, because at least I know Tony Pollard is going to be getting a big workload, especially in that early portion of the season. I would rather have Aaron Jones plus than David Montgomery, so on and so forth there. Some of these other guys are younger, or just I'm uncertain about their workload. Zach Charbonnet, because I'm kind of in on Kenneth Walker, I kind of have to be a little bit lower on Zach Charbonnet. And I think the reason that a lot of people have Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet a little bit different in dynasty rankings is everything I've heard from, the Athletics, Michael Sean Dugar, and some guys that cover the Seahawks, is that they want Walker to prove it this year so they can extend him. And if they extended Kenneth Walker today, Zach Charbonnet's value probably gets a lot worse, because he's not a free agent until after next year. And the assumption, I think, for a lot of people who hold Charbonnet right now is that Walker will leave in free agency and Charbonnet will be the starting running back for this team at some point, whereas I think that could get pretty nuked pretty quickly. So that's kind of where I'm at with Charbonnet and why I'm not as high on him from a dynasty angle as some people seem to be. Bill Merritt, Ja'Cory Crosskey-Merritt, and Cam Scadaboo, both rookie running backs, and same with Jaden Blue. I can kind of group all these guys together. Ja'Cory Crosskey-Merritt has a lot of hype right now, right? Everybody's excited about him. I've seen him go for first-round capital on the open market. So I value him because he's a seventh-round rookie. It's a situation where, let's say he's good this year. Let's say he has an RB2 season, and he's Dameon Pierce, Michael Carter, Tyler Algier, one of these day 3 running backs who produces in fantasy. I do think that in next year's class, it's a very good running back class, the Commanders will be highly invested into a Jeremiah Love, into a Nick Singleton, some of the top guys in next year's class. So even if Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is great and has a great season this year, I don't think he would be long for that starting role. So if people are assuming this is going to be a young back who hits, he's the next Bucky Irving, all this kind of stuff, I would say that you should probably sell him on that basis for an early to mid second rounder or better. Because like I said, on Twitter, I've seen him go for first round capital, and I just definitely cannot get there. So shop him, see what you can get for him. If you lucked into him end of your rookie draft, you're going to use that production, totally fine. But see what else you can get for him. You could probably pair Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt plus a second round pick and go buy low on somebody better. Maybe that gets you in the vicinity of a guy like Breece Hall. Maybe that gets you in the vicinity of a guy like James Cook, or if you wanted to invest into like Quinshon Judkins or RJ Harvey or Caleb Johnson or somebody with a little bit more certainty behind them. Cam Scadaboo has been banged up all offseason. Like I said, I'm a lot more bullish on Tyrone Tracy being the long-term starter here, which is why I'm now lower on Cam Scadaboo, because as a day 3 guy, you kind of have to grab that job when you have the opportunity. And if you lose that opportunity because of injury and whatnot, I think it will impact your future hit rate in Dynasty. Ramondre Stevenson, I just think is cooked. I think Trevion's going to take over that job, and Ramondre is going to be nothing but a handcuff, if that. So that's why I'm selling him right now. And then Jaden Blue, I just didn't think he was that great of a prospect. And similar to the Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt thing, I think that the Cowboys will be heavily invested in taking a running back early next year, or signing a running back in free agency, or even potentially trading for a running back before the season even begins or at the trade deadline. So I'm not really in on Jaden Blue being a long-term fixture. I think at best we're looking at like a Jerick McKinnon type of hit. And I think I'm comfortable missing out on that, knowing that you can maybe sell somebody in your league on the fact that, hey, Javonte Williams isn't very good. Miles Sanders isn't very good. Maybe Jaden Blue will win out this backfield. Sell them on that and see if you can get them off of your roster as a result. So moving into the wide receiver position, of course, running backs and wide receivers are going to take up most of this video. Josh Downs and Christian Kirk are my hard buys. I have talked about them all offseason. I'm pretty sure every single trade targets video I've done this offseason, I did one in January and March and June, so on and so forth. I've talked about both of these guys ad nauseum. Like, I've just been absolutely hammering, you guys need to buy these guys. And it's because Josh Downs, I don't know if you guys care to guess this. How many people in the NFL last year at wide receiver had a higher success rate than Josh Downs? Maybe leave a guess down below before I answer this question. The answer is 0. No one in the NFL among reception perception charted wide receivers had a higher success rate versus zone coverage than Josh Downs. He was also 6th against man coverage as well. And when you factor in the guys that were ahead of him, it's like A.J. Brown, Mike Evans, Nico Collins, guys that are big body dudes. Josh Downs had a 70% contested catch rate at 5'8", 171 pounds. The dude's just a baller, man. The dude was a second-year, 23-year-old wide receiver last year with Anthony Richardson throwing him the football half the season, and he still produced like a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 when he got opportunities. I think that we could legit see a 2022 Amon-Ra St. Brown type of season where he has a 16.1 points per game. The offense funnels through him. Daniel Jones trusts him over the middle of the field and funnels the offense through him. I absolutely love Josh Downs. I always have, and I always will. Christian Kirk, I just think, is this year's Darnell Mooney, this year's Jacoby Myers, that late round wide receiver that you don't spend up a ton on, but he gives you meaningful production. I think that the Texans, all they have really is Nico Collins that I believe in. I don't think Higgins has been getting requisite hype to warrant that I think that he's going to be a major factor. We're hearing that he's splitting snaps with Xavier Hutchinson on the outside, and Jalen Noel, the other rookie, hasn't really been super buzzy in camp either. I think eventually Christian Kirk would probably be overtaken by those guys, but in the short term, if you're a contender, especially if you're in like a 3 wide receiver, 4 flex PPR dynasty league, like some of the leagues that I'm in, I think Christian Kirk's going to have value just the same way that Jacoby Myers would have value last year, or Darnell Mooney would have had value last year. Khalil Shakir would have had value last year. Those are good depth receivers in PPR formats, and I think Christian Kirk fits the bill for that. Moving into the soft buys at wide receiver, a lot of rookies that I think are kind of undervalued here. You got Travis Hunter and Tedoroa McMillan. Both of them are kind of being valued as if you can get them for like mid to late first plus a small piece. And I think both of them should be valued as more than that. Both of them are top 15 dynasty receivers for me. And both of them warrant close to 2 first-round picks of value, given the caliber of prospect they are. I think, what does it look like if Hunter hits this year? Well, he's an exceptionally talented player. It's going to look like him and Brian Thomas Jr. being kind of neck and neck 1A, 1B for a Liam Cohen, Trevor Lawrence-led offense, which I feel very excited about. So I think Travis Hunter has the upside to potentially be a top 5 dynasty wide receiver at the end of the year, just based on the talent of the player that we scouted coming out of school. You guys know that we love Travis Hunter. Tetairoa McMillan, what does it look like if he hits this year? Well, he's going off the board as a top 25 wide receiver in redraft, and he's 22 years old and attached to a quarterback I do think can take a major step this year. And he is the clear number 1. There's no Adam Thielen there to impede the progress. Xavier Legette, Jalen Coker, they're going to fight for targets after Tetairoa McMillan. And I think Tetairoa McMillan has a very good chance also of being a top 5 dynasty wide receiver at the end of this season. Xavier Worthy, Zay Flowers, Chris Olave. I've talked about these guys from a redraft angle a lot. And I do think part of why I'm excited about them in Dynasty is that I feel very good about their redraft outlook. With Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice is suspended for the first 6 games. I think you're going to get a very strong start. Second-year receiver, 22 years old, tethered to Patrick Mahomes. The case writes itself. It's a very high pass rate offense, and Worthy finished the season last year earning targets, 5+ receptions in every single game after week 14. Zay Flowers, I am very fed up with talking about because I've talked about him in literally every single one of these. He is entering his 3rd season. Everybody assumes Zay Flowers, we know what he is. He's going to be a wide receiver 3. No, we don't know what he is. He's only entering his 3rd season, and he is tethered to one of the greatest quarterbacks of this generation, and he is currently the number 1 receiver for that team, and he separates at a 90th percentile rate, specifically against zone coverage and also a high rate against man coverage. I do think that Zay Flowers has another gear left in the tank to become 1,300-yard, 8-touchdown receiver. Not a lot of people agree with that sentiment because the Ravens, don't throw the ball a lot and all that kind of stuff. But I do believe that drafting Zay Flowers, you're getting him about where he should be going based on his median projection. But I do think there's meat left on the bone for a nice ceiling there, and that's why I'm investing in him both in redraft and in Dynasty. Chris Olave, I think the reason I'm a little bit higher on him in Dynasty rather than like in redraft, I'm kind of in line with ADP, is because people assume that the Saints are going to be bad this year, which they probably will be. But I do think that after the season, as long as Chris Olave stays healthy and doesn't have any concussions, that concussion issue will become less of a concern for a lot of people on the Dynasty market, and they'll have a shiny new quarterback, probably 1st overall in the NFL draft in 2026. So I'm not really as worried about Chris Olave as some people seem to be, because the other thing with Olave too is that he's not extended by the team. He's not stuck there. It's not like Garrett Wilson with the Jets where they extended him and they want to keep him there long term. It is possible that if the season's going awry for the New Orleans Saints, they could trade Chris Olave. If in the offseason he doesn't want to be there anymore, he could request a trade and he could get traded to a better team. So all I know about Olave is that he's a young, talented 25-year-old receiver who's commanded 25, 28% plus target shares before, and that's rare to find in like the wide receiver 30 range in Dynasty rankings, which is where he's going. And it's mainly because of the concussions and the bad quarterback play. Jalen Coker, a young player that I just believe in. Again, similar to Tet McMillan, I really believe in Bryce Young. I really believe in the offense. Stephon Diggs, I think he's healthy. If you're a competitive team and you have, like I said, 3 wide receiver, 3 flex plus type of PPR format, I think Stephon Diggs could be available for a very cheap cost. I think the person selling him, probably a competitive team also, but if you can get him for a mid-second rounder, I feel comfortable with that. And then Rashad Bateman too. I just think that the Ravens are just a good offense that you want pieces of. Like, call me crazy, but I actually like, MVP quarterbacks throwing to my receivers. So I'm in on both Bateman and Flowers at their costs right now because neither are very expensive in Dynasty, and both of them are only 25 years old as well, and you should have a number of years left with those guys. Dynasty wide receivers that are soft sells for me at this point. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a soft sell simply because this has nothing to do with St. Brown. He's only 26. I'm not worried about him falling off or anything like that. He is going earlier in Dynasty wide receiver rankings than both Puka Nacua, Brian Thomas Jr., and Drake London, who I prefer in Dynasty. So if you can sell St. Brown for those guys plus, or you can even, if you want to take a risk a little bit and you want to sell him for Ladd McConkey plus, or Marvin Harrison plus, or Travis Hunter plus, or Tetairoa McMillan plus, or somebody like that, I think it's worth shopping Amon-Ra St. Brown because I do think his opinion in the public mind could go down a little bit. He's been a top 5 receiver in back-to-back years. I do think that Jameson Williams might tighten up that gap in terms of targets, as I've talked about in redraft angles before. So I think that St. Brown is worth shopping, not selling, shopping this time of year while people are very excited to buy an anchor wide receiver for their fantasy roster. You can probably get close to 3 first-rounders of liquidity for him, or like I said, Ladd McConkey in a 1 or something like that. Jackson Smith-Njigba, I just think is a little bit overvalued, and it's not anything to do with him. He's a great player. He's only 23 years old. He had a great season last year. I just don't love Sam Darnold being the long-term quarterback there. I just don't think he should be higher than wide receiver 15 or 16 in Dynasty. And right now on the market, based on market value, he is apparently more valuable to a lot of people than Travis Hunter, than Tedero McMillan, than Garrett Wilson, than A.J. Brown, than guys like that. And it's not that I don't think JSN is worthy of being in that conversation. He's in that tier for me. He's just at the end of that tier. So for me, I'm worried about the Sam Darnold situation. I'm worried a little bit about the pass rate of that offense going down too, because if you think about what Ryan Grubb was doing in Seattle last year, a lot of it favored JSN. You have DK Metcalf playing a clear out role, opening up the middle of the field, and it's a air raid pass first offense that Ryan Grubb was running, and JSN got a lot of targets because of that. Maybe he's more efficient this year. Maybe Sam Darnold is better than I think. I just think there's a lot of risk there with the Seattle Seahawks passing game. Ricky Pearsall I've listed as a soft sell. It's not because I don't like Ricky Pearsall. I actually have him pretty in line with market from a redraft perspective, but he is 25 already, even though he's only a second-year receiver. And Zay Flowers is 25 on a better offense, in my opinion, and proven a lot more in the NFL. And Ricky Pearsall is about 10 spots higher in Dynasty wide receiver rankings. I think it's just a misprice of the market. It really has nothing to do with Pearsall, the player. I think that everything that, if you're a Ricky Pearsall believer, you believe about him is probably true. He has a chance to be the number one. He can be off to a fast start because Ayuk is on the mend and Jennings is in a contract dispute right now. All true. I just think that his accumulation value is closer to the higher end of where he could end up going. Like, let's say Ricky Pearsall has a great season this year. He is currently being valued as a top 26 wide receiver in Dynasty. How much further up the board would he go with a great season? Yeah, he'd probably be a top 15 to 18 wide receiver, but I do think it's also because of the caliber of prospect he was. It's also very possible he just doesn't run with that job, doesn't grab the bull by the horns, and is just solid. And if he has a wide receiver 41 in points per game season, I think he would lose quite a bit of value, because then next year he'd be a 26-year-old wide receiver who hasn't produced meaningful production. So I think Ricky Pearsall truthers would be mad at this take, but Ricky Pearsall truthers should maybe understand that if he doesn't do it this year, people are actually going to get a little bit more fed up with him than a normal entering, I guess, his third year receiver season he would be in next year's cycle there. Jacoby Myers, I think he's a soft sell because I just don't think he'll be as productive as he was last year. Bauer's obviously going to be very productive. Thornton and some of the other guys there could eat into his workload. And Jacoby Myers is sneakily old. He's turning 29 midway through the season. And I just don't really believe in this Raiders offense to take a huge, meaningful step with Geno Smith. So that's kind of where I'm at with Jacoby Myers. If you can get a mid-second rounder for him, I would just rather have Stephon Diggs. I would rather have Mike Evans, of course, Devontae Adams, of course, and they're not that far off in price. So if you can use Jacoby Myers plus a second-round pick, go get a better competitive wide receiver if that's the position you're in. I do think that that's something that I would probably be willing to do. Kyle Williams and Dante Thornton, I just think are a little bit overvalued relative to Kyle Williams specifically. Was a good prospect, and I actually really liked his film, but I've been kind of concerned with the lack of hype I've heard around Kyle Williams. Because if you think about the Patriots, is anybody in that receiving core really scaring you off of Kyle Williams breaking out? Because if Kyle Williams is the player that the Dynasty community thinks he is, he should be starting in week 1. And by all indications, he's like the wide receiver 4 or 5 on the depth chart, behind the likes of Demario Douglas and Kayshon Boutte and potentially even more. So the fact that he hasn't really taken that job in camp maybe doesn't bode well for his chances of producing early. And we know in Dynasty, if you're a third-round pick and you don't produce early, you're probably not going to amount to much as far as open market value. Look at some of the guys that didn't produce last year as day 2 picks, Malachi Corley and Jalen Polk and some of those types of guys, Jermaine Burton. Like, they lose a lot of Dynasty value quickly if they're not on the field producing. And Kyle Williams, in my opinion, didn't really have any excuses. It wasn't a big, oh my God, look at all the target competition on this depth chart. It was wide open. He probably should have won the starting job in training camp. And then Dante Thornton, I just don't think was a very good prospect. Even though he's getting a lot of hype, which I think is warranted because he's looked pretty good so far, he is being valued as like a top 50, top 60 Dynasty receiver. So if you could use him to up tier to a better receiver projection, like let's say, for example, you could take Dante Thornton in a second-round pick and you could go buy low on Josh Downs, I would rather do that instead of holding Dante Thornton. If you spent a 4th-round rookie pick on him, by all means, just hold, but maybe shop him on the open market because he's an intriguing name for some people that might see him and go, oh, I would like to invest in Dante Thornton. So Dynasty quarterbacks that I am soft buying, you guys could see some of them there. Again, these are shops, not necessarily hard buys. Caleb Williams right now is being valued as like quarterback 11 or 12 in Dynasty. I've liked what I've seen from him in preseason. We know the Ben Johnson and all the weapons of it all. I value him not quite as much as Danny. Danny has him valued around 3 first-rounders. For me, it would be like 2 first-rounders plus. But knowing that you might be able to get him for about 2 first-rounders right now, I would say that he is a good buy low candidate for Superflex specifically. In one quarterback leagues, I also think he's not a bad buy low because he runs the football. Like Caleb Williams quietly, in that mess of a situation with Shane Waldron and Thomas Brown, was 5th among quarterbacks in rushing yards. So knowing the weapons he has, the protection he now has, the coaching he now has, and he also runs the football, he has a chance to be, after this season, quarterback 4 or 5 in Dynasty, like legitimately. And I don't mean to sound like Danny too much here, but he does belong to at least be in the top 8 to 10 of Dynasty quarterback rankings and not outside of the top 10 like he currently is on Keep Trade Cut. Jordan Love, same thing. I think he's set up for a great season. He's being valued right now quarterback 13, quarterback 14. He's my QB 10, and I have him close to that Drake May, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Patrick Mahomes territory. He's not that far off for me. I would spend early to mid 3rd round startup pick on Jordan Love. And right now he is, I'd say, about 80, 90 cents cheaper on the dollar than what I value him as. So if you guys are looking for a competitive quarterback, I think he makes a lot of sense. Kyler Murray is all over the place in Dynasty value. The market has him QB 20, which I get Kyler Murray's frustrating. I get he hasn't been like the most consistent, the best fantasy quarterback lately, but he has been a QB1 every single season of his career that he's been healthy. And Kyler Murray, too, has what could be 2 of the best young players at their position in the league. Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride. That will go a long way with upping his passing ceiling because that's been the problem with Kyler. He actually ran the ball a lot more last year than he did the previous 2 with the ACL tear, coming off of the ACL tear. So I think that running game is really starting to rebound a little bit for Kyler. And if he has a better passing ceiling because Marvin's legit and Trey's legit and whatnot, I do think we could see a better ceiling out of Kyler Murray. And I think QB 20 is just a little bit too low for him. I get he's a risky asset, but if I was needing a quarterback too and I was in a super flex league, I would still pay 2 first-rounders for Kyler Murray because I feel like he's worth the risk because he still has the ceiling to finish top 6, top 8 at the quarterback position. He's still only 28 years old. Baker Mayfield and Dak Prescott, you need a contending quarterback. It doesn't get much better than these guys. Baker's got great weapons. They're going to throw the ball a lot. Emeka Egbuka, Mike Evans, Godwin and McMillan once they're back. K. Daughton once he's back from injury as well. Can't really go wrong with Baker. He was a QB4 in fantasy last year. Dak Prescott, last time he was healthy, 2nd in MVP voting in 2023. Now without Micah Parsons on that defense, they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, and Jake Ferguson probably going to get a lot of targets. And if you need a quarterback on a competitive team, you know, you're in a super flex league, your quarterback 2 is like Matthew Stafford, or your quarterback 2 is like Cam Ward, and you don't feel comfortable going into the season with a rookie as your main starter on a competitive team, go send out offers for Baker Mayfield and Dak Prescott. I think you'd be surprised that you can get them for like a mid 1 and a mid 2. Like I think you can get both of these guys probably for about that price tag. Maybe not so much Baker because he's coming off the great season, but definitely Prescott in that situation. And as is the case, I believe in the Colts. So I do think Daniel Jones is a good long-term buy right now because I think he's going to have a good season. And if I think he's going to have a good season, he's going to have a chance to sign an extension there because what else are the Colts going to do? Like let's say Daniel Jones has a 4,000 passing yard, 21 touchdown through the air, 8 interception, 6 rushing touchdowns, 600-yard type of season. I think the Colts would extend him. I think they would give him a Sam Darnold type of contract, and I think he would gain a lot of dynasty value as a result. So I'm buying him right now as a throw into deals. I'm buying him right now. Like if you guys are in a position, I think a lot of people out there in Superflex are like this, where you have, let's say, J.J. McCarthy and Josh Allen as your quarterbacks. Those are your 2 quarterbacks, but you don't really have a quarterback 3. Maybe you have Joe Flacco or something like that as a quarterback 3. If you want a cheap quarterback 3 that could really gain a lot of value and even hit your lineup because he runs the football and has good weapons, Daniel Jones to me is the perfect throw-in. Throw him into late 2nd rounder at somebody for him. Get him in the back of a deal to sweeten up your side of it. I like him a lot for that situation. I actually bought him in one league where I didn't have a quarterback 3. I have Josh Allen and CJ Stroud, and I threw him into the back of that trade that I made with Jared, which I'll throw on the screen right now. And that's how I got Daniel Jones on my roster, and I feel really good about that trade actually too. Then some soft sells and some hard sells at the quarterback position. I think Cam Ward's a soft sell simply for this reason and this reason alone. He is being valued as quarterback 14 in Dynasty right now. And similar to what I said about Ricky Pearsall, I think that if Cam Ward has a great season, he is going to gain more value than quarterback 14 because he's a rookie quarterback. If he has a great season, he'll probably be in that Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Drake May territory, maybe just shortly behind that area, QB 10 or so. But if he's being valued quarterback 14 without having played a game on a team that doesn't really project to be that good, I just think that we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit. Like putting him ahead of JJ McCarthy, who's in a better situation, who is a better prospect, putting him ahead of Michael Penix, who's in a better situation, putting him ahead of Bryce Young, who I have a lot more data on, I think is a better quarterback at this point in time, putting him ahead of those competitive guys like Baker Mayfield, like Dak Prescott, if you're on a competitive team. It just feels a little early to me. I think that he should be in the range of like, yeah, he should be ahead of Tua Tagovailoa, but he should be right around that range of like where Michael Penix is going. And he's being valued ahead of that right now. Even though he runs the ball a little bit, he's not going to be a major factor on the ground. So Cam Ward, shop him, see if you can tier up. Based on his quarterback 14 price tag, apparently you can swap him straight for Kyler Murray right now, which I would much rather have Kyler Murray, especially if I was a competitive team. And then 2 hard sells at the quarterback position. I just think they're going to lose their jobs. And both of them actually are not currently slated to start, Anthony Richardson and Tyler Shuck. If anybody is interested in buying these players, you should be selling them for whatever you can get for them, because I think they're going to be dead assets very, very soon. The tight end position. Quickly, I'll go through this. There's not a lot of guys that are mispriced. I think generally this position is priced appropriately. Terrence Ferguson, the Los Angeles Rams rookie tight end, is somebody that is heavily on my radar. He is one of my highest roster tight ends on Underdog. The Rams love what he can bring to the table as like a big slot, movable chess piece, and they've been looking for a tight end for years. They were reportedly trying to trade up for Brock Bowers last year. They were trying to get this part of their offense. And when Sean McVay is that intentional about something, I want to pay attention, because he is one of the best coaches in the league. And apparently, they traded out of the first round for the Jackson Dart deal to the Giants. They were apparently going to take him in the first round. And Terrence Ferguson, in our prospect model, comped favorably to like George Kittle as far as like athletically what he can bring to the table. And he's very young still. And yes, he has some work to do with his hands and his route running and that kind of thing. But I feel like in that system, you can develop quickly, because Sean McVay is an exceptional coach. Look what Puka Nacua became as a player who definitely needed some development coming out of BYU. I think Terrence Ferguson, it wouldn't shock me at all if he's a top 6 tight end by the end of his rookie season. Let's say down the stretch, week 10 onward, he's producing like a top 5 tight end or something. He's going to be one of these guys that becomes a real needle mover at the position, especially in that offense, with Puka Nacua as the only long-term weapon there, because Adams is on the older side of things. I think Terrence Ferguson can be a really, really great option. So if you're a rebuilder looking for a tight end, go send out some offers for Terrence Ferguson. If you're a competitive team and you hate tight ends like I hate tight ends, Dallas Goedert and Hunter Henry, I think, can give you meaningful production this year. They're on good offenses. They have a chance to be top 3 targets on their team. In Henry's case, probably a top 2 target on his team. And I feel confident that the Eagles' pass volume will bounce back to the point that Goddard will at least be a guy that you can stream in good matchups. And who knows, Hunter Henry was commanding targets from Drake May last year. And if Drake May takes a step forward, the offense is better. If Josh McDaniels schemes it up a little bit better, I think Hunter Henry could very easily finish as a top 8 to 10 tight end this year. And you got him probably for basically nothing on the open market. And I like to address tight end positions like that, especially in tight end premium formats. Henry is the type of guy that catches a lot of passes, so he is going to be a really good option in those formats. Now, guys that are soft sells in my Dynasty tight end rankings, Kyle Pitts is currently being valued as a top 10 tight end. I'm somewhat optimistic on Kyle Pitts still, that I think he could develop a nice connection with Michael Penix. We've heard kind of rumblings of that. But being valued as a top 10 tight end to me is just, it's a little wishful thinking on what we know of Kyle Pitts to this point in his career. So if you can sell him for a mid-second rounder or better, I would definitely do that, especially in any kind of tight end premium format. I would rather trade Kyle Pitts plus something else and go get a better lockdown tight end option like a Tucker Kraft or a David Njoku, or maybe you can get anywhere within the vicinity of a rookies with Kyle Pitts plus a first rounder. Like if you could trade Kyle Pitts and a late projected first next year and get up to Colson Loveland or Tyler Warren, I would absolutely be willing to do that. If you have a Kyle Pitts believer in your league, there usually is a couple in every single league, you should be able to sell him. Evan Ingram, I just don't believe as much in the short-term projection redraft-wise. So as a 31-year-old tight end, I'm not super excited about him. He kind of reminds me a little bit of when like Darren Waller went to the Giants and people were like, oh, he's just going to be like a high-targeted guy there. But when guys are 31 years old and they're not like exceptional players to begin with at this point in their career, I'm just a little bit skeptical that they're going to be like top 5 fantasy tight ends. And if he's anything less than a top 6 to 8 tight end, he's going to lose a ton of value from where he's going right now. So if you can get anywhere close to a second round caliber asset for Evan Ingram, I think you should probably sell him. And Elijah Arroyo, I just wasn't high on the prospect. And I think that Seattle has cleared the runway for him. Noah Fant's gone. It's just him and AJ Barner there. I just wasn't that high on the prospect. I thought he was very raw, not ready to play right away. And I do think you can probably get him for cheaper as a throw-in next year, as opposed to paying up for him this year. Like think of like Jatavian Sanders and Ben Sinnott. What are they worth now after a down rookie season? That's what I think Elijah Arroyo is going to look like as an asset a year from now. And right now, he's being valued as like a top 22, top 24 dynasty tight end. And there's just guys in that territory that I would prefer to Elijah Arroyo. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Again, we are officially in week 1, so I figured I'd give you guys some last chance. Go trade for these guys. If you're in Dynasty leagues looking to rebuild, I gave you some options. If you're in Dynasty leagues looking to contend, I gave you some options. Definitely leave me a like down below. Check out our brand new Dynasty trade value chart, which is where all of this data came from. I'll do our best to update this at least on a monthly basis during the season, because quickly in week 2, week 3, a lot of this stuff is going to change. We're going to have a lot more information. So I would say just conservatively, I want to make an update to this early in the season, midway through the season, later in the season, and then really late in the season to make sure you guys know the appropriate market values, how players are being valued, because this is a really important part of Dynasty. Week 2, week 3, you can get some exceptional buy lows on some players. You can sell high on some players. You saw what people were doing with Jordan Mason last year. People were selling him for first round Dynasty rookie picks. And like, there was people in our comments that said, yeah, I sold Jordan Mason for what became the 103 in the rookie draft, and I got, Travis Hunter with it. Like, there's value to be had at the beginning portion of the season, because people are very reactive, especially in newer Dynasty leagues with less experienced players. So definitely stay tuned to your Dynasty market, to making trades and trying to find value, especially early in that point in the season. But these are the last chance before they go up in value, before they go down in value, trade targets based on our personal rankings that you guys can go check out. If you want to use our trade calculator or my reviews, we're going to have tons of Dynasty content coming to the site during the season. We'll have some updated Dynasty rookie rankings for the 2026 class at certain points in the year. Lots of Dynasty content coming over there. And of course, our Dynasty rankings will be updated probably on a weekly basis throughout the season as well. So definitely check that out. That'll be linked down below in the pinned comment on flockfantasy.com. Get the trade value chart, get our rankings, so on and so forth. Check out the prospect model. Check out our Dynasty rookie draft guide from 2025. Definitely stay tuned for all that stuff. That'll be in the pinned comment, like I said. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.